Hello everyone, my name is Cezar Mahumane. Thank you for having me for this session for the ArchTalk. Today I'll be presenting on the underwater cultural heritage in Mozambique, current research potential opportunities and the management challenge that we've been facing in Mozambique regarding the underwater cultural heritage. So the underwater cultural heritage of Mozambique have been challenged by different human and natural threats that called attention to archaeologists and heritage managers to this. So this presentation aims to present and discuss some of the most acute threats already identified in Mozambique and address the efforts done so far to mitigate the situation and the research potential that the UCH possess in Mozambique. So here I'll be describing the main areas in Mozambique identified with UCH and also the main threats, the research opportunity, and the local initiative found to mitigate some of the threats already identified along the Mozambique coast, especially in northern Mozambique, where we have been developing a number of research projects. So in this map, I would like to give you a sense of the location of Mozambique. This country is located along the southern part of Africa and the eastern coast. It is on the east there is the Indian Ocean that is the main domain along the Mozambican coast. So the map that I'm showing here, it's the country Mozambique, and there are three red dots that we can see there are the main areas where have been identified with the UCH along different from different projects that have been carried out since the colonial period and also after the independence. So the coast of Mozambique has more than 2,700 kilometers long, and for millennia this provided resources for communities to settle and develop sea-related activities. So all these activities contributed to constitute a strong community that rely mostly on coastal resources. As such, underwater cultural heritage became one of the main domain here, especially if you look to the presence of shipwrecks along this coast. So despite the fact that the majority of ancient underwater evidence found in northern Mozambique, there are also reports of the presence of underwater cultural heritage in central area and also in the southern area of Mozambique. So from now on, I'll be focusing on these specific areas, but I'll emphasize two areas here, the northern part of the country and the southern part of the country, where we have been identified a lot of underwater resources, the one I'll be describing here. So when we look to this map here, it's part of the Cabo Delgado and the Nampula provinces in northern Mozambique that have been located a number of shipwrecks, and especially focusing on Mozambique Island. The first research opportunities that were undertaken in this island were around the 1960s by Quirin da Fonseca during the colonial time in Mozambique. So Quirin da Fonseca was not an archaeologist, but he developed what was considered the first project in underwater heritage in Mozambique. And here he identified two main areas along Mozambique Island that shipwreck would occur quite easily. As we can see here in the map below, there is the area A, B, and C, where today we find a lot of shipwrecks along this small island in northern Mozambique. And if you look to the whole coast of Nampula province, there are also areas here that have been located a number of shipwrecks. The southern part of Mozambique, although we haven't found along the Inhambane coast shipwrecks, but we have here at Vilanculo a place called Shibueni that is one of the ancient harbor, one of the ancient ports that we have records here in Mozambique. And this Sassanid ball that were located on this coastal harbor that has a big shell maiden that provided a lot of artifacts, including this Sassanid ball dated from the 7th century, is one of the ancient finds that have been located so far along the coast. That also witnesses that this coast was already connected with the whole region, especially the Indian Ocean rim, and a lot of exchanging were happening here. So we so far had this evidence, but also through written resources. For instance, this letter here that describes a shipwreck that occurred along the Inhambane Bay. We also have records of the presence of a number of shipwrecks along the coast of Maputo here, especially near the main harbor. There are also been located a number of recent methyl shipwrecks that are located on this area. So if we look in terms of threats to this UCH, we find here that there are two main kinds of threats, the human threats and the natural threats. And from the table here, we can identify for the human threats, the large commercial constructions, the oil gas exploitation, the construction of ports and marine terminals, commercial fishing, and also what is considered intentional threats like the treasure hunting and sport diving. Looking to the natural threats, we have the physical, biological, and chemical threats that I'll be speaking more in details in the next slides. So, from the terms of the oil and gas, we have seen that a lot of news have come out in Mozambique where that our coast have been has been exploited for exploitation of oil and also gas, and these because the cultural resource studies are very few done in Mozambique, which is one of the challenges that we're facing now. There are a number of um, reports of shipwrecks that are located in some areas, but because there is a lack of this kind of studies, we have no information regarding them. Fishing, industrial fishing is also one of the main threats here. As we can see, there is in one of the pictures here. There is this big net that was found entangled in one of the remains of a wooden shipwreck in Mozambique Island, more specifically. But we also have different kind of local fishing, especially this one that was really harming to not only to shipwrecks but also to the marine biology there, because we can see here this is a fishing that is done with with the air that is supplied straight to the diver that is underwater, and he's picking anything that he sees in front of him. One of the biggest threats that we had here in Mozambique is the treasure hunting. Like for almost 14 years, we had this terrible situation in Mozambique Island where a company were exploiting a number of shipwrecks and excavating these sites to collect valuable materials. So after all this situation, we now turn attention to the northern Mozambique, where all of these threats have been affecting most of the heritage. Recently, there is this center that is called Kairini. It's a center of archaeology, resource, and investigation in Mozambique Island that was inaugurated in 2018. This center basically monitors the shipwrecks around Mozambique Island and conducts a number of studies on these shipwrecks, but also train local community in diving and also monitoring the situation of some of the wrecks here. So here we can see an example of the study of these threats to the underwater cultural heritage in Mozambique, where we conducted the studies, environmental studies looking to the solvent oxygen, the temperature, light, pH, the speed of the currents on a site to get an idea of how the changing on these uh, the changing on these aspects are affecting the shipwrecks. So after we have seen the main damages and how these things happens, we have decided to mitigate the situation. So we had to do some research in terms of how we could mitigate this situation. So from what the studies that we have conducted, a geotextile seemed to be a perfect solution to mitigate this situation of one of the shipwrecks in Mozambique Island. In terms of challenges in managing this heritage, we have to do some work to improve the compliance of the national law at different levels, especially by companies that conduct a number of development projects, do all the other efforts to ratify the UNESCO Convention, and also develop a national inventory on underwater cultural heritage, control access to underwater sites, and also improve conservation conditions of shipwrecks and artifacts, and also promote regional and international cooperation that would improve the research that we are conducting in some of the shipwrecks. So part of the solution here that are being developed is training the local communities in diving, but also to monitor and to be there assisting the researchers, but also developing local initiatives in terms of profiting from this heritage, from cultural tourism. And here we can see a number of support that is given by the communities to the researchers that are conducting a number of studies on the shipwrecks along Mozambique Island. So this study has been conducted by a team from Kairin that I've been leading since 2018, and part of these research can be found on these references that I'm sharing here with you. So if you want to go deeper in some of the studies that have been conducted, here are the links and some references to those studies. And thank you so much. I'll be looking forward to answer your questions.